What's happening, everybody? It's Billy Nash. Welcome to my podcast, episode 10, with a special guest that's in an industry that might be a little boring, but it's a necessity in doing luxury real estate deals, really doing any kind of real estate deal. Everybody needs insurance. But before we talk about the insurance side of it, I'm going to introduce Ryan, who is the president of Gallagher Insurance, Ryan Pappy, and he is also handling all of the advisory work for the Kai's Company and Illustrated Properties, which is also in Florida, the largest independently owned brokerage in Florida. So we have over 6,000 agents, and Ryan is a trusted advisor to me since I started in the business, and he's had tremendous value. So Ryan Pappy's here as a guest. I also wanted to thank everybody for listening to the podcast number 9. We got some great feedback from that, and it looks like a lot of people are working on their 23 meetings for 2023. Get it done. So we're going to dig right in. Ryan, thank you for coming on to the show. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Ryan is a true Floridian. Yes. Born in Florida. There's not that many of us here, but Ryan is one of them. Yes. So tell me a little bit about your background, Ryan, then we'll talk a little bit about how you bring your expertise to a luxury real estate agent, an agent that's building their business, and we'll dig in a little bit about that and how I think there's great leverage when using this part of the services that you provide to clients.
Right. So thank you for having me. I think I was actually one of the first people that met you when you came to Kai's. I met you very soon after that, and you made some very bold predictions, and all of them have come true. So that's pretty special and pretty unique. My daughters are 10th generation Floridians, so I'm 9th. So basically been here a long time, understand the weather here, lived through a lot of hurricanes myself. I was actually 12 years old when Hurricane Andrew came, changed up everybody's lives down here. And at that time, the only saving grace to everybody was the insurance company. Most of those insurance companies aren't, participating anymore. But that was something that was fundamental to me growing up, seeing how all that made a big difference. And so 10th generation.
How long have you been in the insurance industry?
15 years. 15 years. Yeah. I was looking at that the other day. I was shocked.
Yeah, 15 years.
Flew by a lot faster than I thought.
So I think it's important, like you said, we met early on when I started in the business about 6.5 years ago. Because I come from private banking, I was always the quarterback of the relationship. So right. My job was to make sure that my clients were exposed to the bank in different areas, whether it was, commercial lending, whether it was trust and estate planning, whether it was philanthropy advisory, whatever it was. I made sure that I was always surrounded, by top advisors.
Right.
And I think that adds tremendous value. So when I started in real estate, I wanted to know who in the company could add value to the process, still thinking like, a private banker. So right. You were one of the first persons that I had met at Kai's, because I knew that insurance, well, it sounds kind of boring, was a very, very important part of a real estate transaction, right? Because especially in Florida. So how do you interact? First of all, people that are listening to this have to realize that I don't want to be an expert in insurance,
right?
But I want to be an expert in referring the expert to add value to a deal.
That's right.
So how do you interact with agents? What would you tell an agent, how to use your value-added services to help them with deals?
Right. So just like you, my background was private banking too before I got into insurance. And it's a real unique model. And I think there's one to try to replicate. At a bank, you do go out there, you bring in business, you have the experts in each field that come in, you diversify, their products to your clients, and overall creates a better experience for them. When it comes to insurance specifically, there's a ton of added value that having a good agent will help you. They'll be able to help you at the offer stage. They'll be able to help you at the listing stage and all the way through the inspections, getting to closing, dealing with financing. All of that is something that you can, if you have one person that you're using, you can put them, have confidence in them. If not, you're going to be relying on somebody else to do all that work. And in a market like we have in Florida, it is extremely important to have that one person that that can do deals. And it's doing deals all the way from the mansion on the beach, all the way to the second or third investment property that may not be A-rated, that may need a lot of extra work and a lot of extra underwriting. having an insurance person is critical. And I would actually couple that with having an inspector too, and making sure that they know how to work together. They can get the answers, because in the market where lack of options is kind of the main game, the only important thing that you can really provide is the correct information as soon as possible. And if you have somebody on your team, you're going to have that. You'll be better able to advise your clients, because in some areas there are, certain properties that may not be best just from an insurance perspective for them to take. And the more that you're working together, you can do a lot. An example of that would be if you're going to go to a listing meeting, you might as well get the insurance quoted. You're going to know then before the open house if there's any red flags that are going to come up that you're going to have to address. And if not, and everything's great, put that on a flyer right there on the table, because people are concerned with the insurance. Hey, this house has the inspections, has the windows, has the roof, all the permits are here.
And we've been dealing a lot, in the last couple of years, we've had this mass exodus out of the big cities, LA, New York City, and people are establishing residency here in Florida. And of course, the first thing they think of is hurricanes, because we are prone to hurricanes. But it seems to me over the last 10 years, knock on wood, the east coast of Florida has not had any major issues. And this is something that I know you're not a weatherman, Ryan, but because you're in that industry, right, you know a lot about weather. And that's one of the things I remembered you told me when I first started in the business. You gave me a little education on the hurricanes, and it's been pretty accurate.
Yeah.
So I always think about the Ryan Pappy weather model.
Yeah.
So what is that? I mean, to tell everybody that's listening.
Well, I think specifically that was Hurricane Irma, which was a very, very scary storm for all of us. For like 3 or 4 days, I had it barreling down there, showing pictures of the Virgin Islands, wrecked big concrete mansions, and everybody was obviously very concerned. But once it crosses a certain point and it hits the mountains in Cuba, it always slows it down. And typically those end up on the West Coast more than they do on the East Coast. But, that's fingers crossed. Another one that you can kind of go back is like a good luck tale or a myth is the more rain that you get in May and June, the less likely you're going to get a hurricane in September or August. So that's another thing that they look at. But when I really have to look, I have a guy that I go on his website. I feel like I don't get any of the, the drama, and I get the real information. I try to share that with all my agents, because binding in hurricane season is important. When the state of Florida comes underneath a watch and, the cone is out there, and the cone of uncertainty, they call it, most of those carriers will suspend writing business. So if you have
so explain that. So if you're, and I know the answer, but I think for listeners, they might say, well, what is he talking about? So you're buying a house, you're representing a client, and the deal is closing on Friday. It's a $4 million transaction.
Right.
And there's a hurricane brewing over the weekend prior to the closing. What happens?
Okay. So as soon as, definitely if you become in a hurricane warning, even a hurricane watch, most of the private carriers will obviously shut down from binding insurance because they don't want to take on a risk right before a hurricane hits. And it's actually even been increasing more and more as different carriers have come into our local market, and the state companies more prevalent, they're even more strict. So it doesn't even have to be coming towards your neighborhood. It could be hitting anywhere in the state of Florida, and they'll suspend service. So what you do is you bind the coverage. If you need to change the closing date, change the closing date. You can still cancel the policy if necessary. But if you have a property for sale in Florida during July, August, or September, it's in your definitely best interest to bind as soon as you can. And especially if you start seeing the weatherman come on with hurricanes and cones. And
I remember you told me, this is actually a true story. I said to Ryan, there was something brewing, and I asked him, and he said to me, well, and this is what'll happen. And if it does happen and we do get a category 4 or something that rolls over, he said, you're gonna be in a closet. Mm-hmm. You're going to be scared to death.
That's true.
For about 24 hours, 12 hours, and then it's going to lift and the sun will be out, and then you just got to replace a ton of landscaping.
Right. And that was a conversation I had with somebody that had gone through a superstorm.
I mean, it sounds scary.
Yeah,
I was in Sandy.
Yeah, you were in Sandy, and then you look at the winds, and it's like, hey, Billy, it can get a lot faster than that. That was mostly a flood issue. But you're hiding in there. You're getting through those 2 hours.
So here's something interesting about Sandy. So we literally lived on the water in Bricktown, New Jersey, which is the Jersey Shore. And when Hurricane Sandy came, we actually had water come up my driveway, which I've never ever had seen water like that.
Right.
And then all of a sudden on the horizon, I could see purple explosions along the ocean because we were only about 2 miles from the ocean. So I said, holy shit, what is that? Right. And they were the transformers because the wave came in and kind of took out everything along the ocean.
Right.
And then I watched our cars slowly fill with water. And I remember my son crying because the lights were on underneath the water.
Right.
So, and then they got up to about midway to the rear view mirror. And that's when it subsided, but we didn't get out of the house. We were kind of dumb. But I remember the next morning in Hurricane Sandy, and it wasn't really a hurricane. It was just a wave.
Right.
I remember getting up and looking out, and it reminded me of that movie Waterworld because everything was underwater. It was crazy.
Wow.
And then we got out by boat, and actually if you go to Billy Nash Jersey Shore on YouTube, I actually have some video that I posted the day after, because my friend and I got up to the Barrier Islands and we actually recorded it. And you got to see, it was like, holy shit!
And how long did
a bomb went off?
How long did the water last?
The water receded on my street in about a day and a half. It took about 2 days. There was still standing water, but the main part of the flood, because that's really what it was. It wasn't a hurricane. The main part of the flood I can tell was receding because I could see the dirt line on the white fence. And I actually called 911 at midnight that night because I thought my house was going to burn down. That's the thing I was afraid of, was like fire.
Right.
And I remember calling and I said, well, when is low tide? Right. Because that was, when's low tide? And the police officer said, it is low tide. And I was like, holy shit.
Wow, man.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I woke up that morning to a Coast Guard helicopter circling around the area. Because remember, the bridge broke through.
Yep.
So I don't mean to scare everyone that's listening to this, but I have experience in the, in these storms that can devastate. Look what happened, recently in Fort Myers. So you have to be insured and prepared.
And most of your clients, especially buying luxury properties, have been through stories like that. You're buying properties in beautiful locations. Most of those beautiful locations are very prone to Mother Nature, whether it's in California, whether it's here in Florida, whether it's on the New Jersey Shore or the Hamptons. So everybody kind of has that story. And that's why it's important to make sure that they're protected. A lot of it's getting to closing, making sure all the documents are prepared, finding the right price. But it's also really important to protect them. And I think you can really do as the realtor, to be out there having to go through that or depending on somebody else to get it done is sometimes pretty difficult. Some high net worth clients have a good relationship with their insurance person too. So you have to, weigh that each and every time.
Well, I've worked with you in the past. I don't want to interrupt you, but I've worked with you in the past where maybe a policy wasn't written. There was no business that was written.
Right.
But you were a trusted advisor to me and my client to help them think through things before a closing. So that adds to me is just tremendous value. Right. It's not always about just writing the policy.
That's exactly right. And a lot of them come with a profile. They have a list of properties that they have. They have an agent that they could be working with. And sometimes adding a Florida property to a schedule that has properties from other places in the world is the most advantageous thing for them than getting a separate one-time policy, in Florida. But it changes. Each client has different needs, different, setups on the purchase. But yeah, that's important. You got to make sure that you're getting the best advice. The goal is to get them closed as quickly as possible. So obviously we want to get the deal, but we're work with the company trying to get Billy Nash to make sure this deal gets closed so you can get on to the next deal. That's really where this comes in. Yeah.
And it's a valuable service, like I said, to the client. One of the things that I've seen also, not just here in Florida, in these markets where there are prone to natural disasters, and not that we're being negative on natural disasters, is even in Napa Valley and Healdsburg in the wine country. Right. They've had such big fires, and it's very hard to even insure those vineyards now.
Right.
The carriers won't even insure them. So, pretty much these guys that are buying them are self-insured. We actually, not to deviate away, but my wife and I, Tracy and I, we actually were in Healdsburg for the Kincaid fire. So we got invited out and spent some time on the coastline there in Sonoma. And while we were there, it was like day 5, the Kincaid fire started. And it was a massive fire. And for a couple of days, We could smell it. It was smoky. It was weird. It was weird. And and then the third day of the fire, the wind shifted, and they knocked on our door in the morning and said, you have to evacuate now. And we did, to San Francisco, which was gross. That's another story. But
so the thing is not to travel with you between the flood and the fire.
No, man.
Shit. It's kind of like you're traveling with Tom Hanks.
Hey, listen, we always come out alive.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's
we always come out alive. But that's what I'm saying. So some of these product is some, they won't insure them.
What's important to kind of get a baseline understanding of is once you hit a certain amount of insurance amount, whether it's for a personal property or a vineyard that's personal property and also a business, there's few limited companies out there that go ahead and sell that product. A lot of them are ones you've heard about, AIG, Chubb, places like that. As reinsurance has gone up and as they've been, losing money on claims, they've definitely slowed down. Like in Florida, we felt a slowdown. And we kind of feel like we're out here on an island. And a lot of the times they'll say, well, it's kind of like how it is in California. So it's, you feel like you're both going through it. The market's still buzzing. The deals are still getting done. But it's a little bit harder on the eligibility side. But we do think some of those things might come, it's one thing about insurance pricing is things are very cyclical. Like that's an industry trait.
Yeah.
So if you were to look at commercial rates today, over the last 15 years, they peaked in about 2004. Then they went all the way down, stayed down for a long period of time. And now they're starting to increase. I personally think that it's probably past 2004, but nationally right now it's about the same, but it's cyclical. So, once, when there's nobody that's running the business, it creates a bigger opportunity. So just like any other business, insurance, the best place to come in and test a model and to show proof of your marketing and the demand would be a place like Florida or a place like California because the premiums are significantly higher. So there's always going to be somebody stepping up to the plate. We spend a lot of time looking for who that next person is going to be. And the one thing I would also add, just because we haven't gotten into it too much, is if you do capture the insurance policy with an in-house person or somebody that you're working with, it's a really good way to stay in touch with them over time. If they're doing the right job and checking them and doing the renewals, it's a good way to keep that relationship going. And that's something that we've had a lot of success with too. If people's going to sell their house after we've insured it 5 or 6 years, oh yes, have you talked to your agent again? You get the listing. That's important.
So this is I think very key. If you're building a luxury real estate business, okay, you have to have all the tools right in the shed to help bridge a deal, to advise a client. So insurance, you might have a relationship with a trust and estate attorney that might want to structure something for their estate. All of these things are so important to my process. Mm-hmm. And anybody that's listening that's either building a luxury business or has a luxury business, and they'll know, they know that it's the reality. The more people surrounding the transaction that can add value creates a longer term relationship, because a client, it's sticky. Right. You want to do a deal that's sticky. And what I mean by that, when the deal closes, those clients were so happy with the services you provided. They might not have been just real estate services. Mm-hmm. It becomes a sticky transaction. So we've had clients, the ultimate testimonial to anyone's business is a repeat customer.
Absolutely.
Right. A repeat customer. So if you're coming back to us and this happens for the third and fourth transaction, that means that you're doing something right. Right. And it became sticky. Right. I want to be sticky.
And it's also much easier to keep a client than find a new one, right? Or, less expensive. So it's a win-win if you're able to do that. Now, I can speak to that. I got a property one time, different place, different language. My realtor was the one that put all those pieces together.
Exactly.
It was a sticky transaction.
Exactly. And that's the key. You want to do sticky transactions that'll keep you in front of your valuable, loyal client for the long run. And anybody listen to this podcast, you've heard me say, and you might get a couple of more shots to ring the bell. Right. So big believer on putting your team together. So if you're listening to this, take out a sheet of paper, when you get back to the office or wherever you are, and put down those top 4 or 5 advisors, mm-hmm. right, that your client may want to have access to. And another thing that makes sense, and this is smart. find out from your client if you have a relationship that's a very strong relationship, of course. You want to reach out to their advisors as well, because they can become a resource to you, but also a resource to refer their, more existing clients. So their financial advisor is always a good person to chat with,
right?
Because he's managing the money.
Oh yeah.
Right. So he's a guy that's going to have, 150 ultra high net worth clients, just like your client. So always look at the team as also a networking vehicle for more business, down the road.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, if you're just even getting started out, or you've done a couple nice deals, there's going to be insurance, mortgage, title, all sorts of the vendors that are going to be very happy to work with you. They want to take your phone call, set up a day, interview a few different ones, stay focused on that one topic, try things out, know that things aren't going to be perfect every time. Loyalty does matter over time, but there's going to be a very good talent pool of people that are going to be looking to work with you. They're going to be looking to help find ways to refer for you. So it's like adding 4 or 5 people to your company, with no extra cost.
Exactly.
And it makes a big difference in terms of support, but it's finding those same people that are going to see that whole deal through. They're going to, understand the way you work. They're going to understand your value, your commitment level to each client. That is crucial.
And we actually, with the brokerage that we are with, we have our family of services.
Right.
So we have access to property management, to insurance, to mortgage, to all these things that help us as an agent with Kai's and Illustrated Properties, which helps our business tremendously. But some people could be listening that aren't at a firm like that has their own pockets of expertise. Right. So it's easy to build it on your own.
Exactly.
Go to the best in the business in your town that writes policies.
Right.
Go to the best property manager. And you build your business around them as well. And it will help you in the long run. So just because your company or brokerage you're with doesn't own these divisions, right, doesn't mean you can't build it on your own. And it's easy because they want to talk to you.
Well, we're super proud of the fact that we have it, and we feel like we're one of the only ones that does it to our level of commitment. So it's highly likely that would be the case. But you can go out and you can pick who you'd like to work with. Again, it's measuring their level of commitment. How hard are they going to work for each and every client? But it's imperative to have that. If not, you're going to be putting too much trust in too many different people, and maybe you'll get the deal, but you'll be stressed out the whole time.
What's the craziest insurance story you could tell in under a minute?
Okay. We had an inspection come through one time. The windows were fine. The roof was fine. All the straps were there, but there was a tiger chained in a cage in the backyard.
No shit.
So that's one.
Wasn't Tyson's house?
No, it was not Tyson's
Wasn't
house.
The guys from Hangover?
No, this was like in a kid's, like in a regular neighborhood.
Hey, you know who else had a tiger?
Yeah.
Tony Montana.
Yeah, exactly. So, when we look at these, we're checking off things in the boxes. That's one of the things that comes up. You don't necessarily look at the photos. The second thing is we've had people call in for hurricane claims hours before the storm lands. Like it's not a recorded phone call with the time, date on it. So those are always fun too.
So we're gonna deviate away from insurance for a minute because Ryan is a good friend of mine, and I know that he's a global traveler. Mm-hmm. And we're gonna just touch base a little bit. Where is your favorite place? And people ask me this as well in the world, but I say they're all my favorite because they're all unique and different. But if you had to pick one of your favorite places in the world to travel, because you go all over the friggin' place, where would it be? And tell us a little bit about it.
Okay, so it'd obviously be Argento, Lake Como. But after that, man, there's so many cool places. Budapest is unbelievable.
Which I'm going this summer.
In its own way. Amsterdam's fantastic. Paris, London. I always try to measure them up. My wife's like, don't do that. It's going to be impossible.
But I'm going to Prague because of you.
I was going to say, if I had to pick one place and I couldn't be in Italy, I would pick Prague.
Yep. And that's you were telling me about Prague. So on this trip this summer, we like to work hard and work overseas, right?
Right.
And
be where your clients are.
Exactly. So clients are on the Amalfi Coast. Clients are in London. Clients are, at the Four Seasons in Prague. You know what I mean? So that's fun, but it's also work, right?
Right.
So on our trip this summer, I love doing the research and put it all on social media when we're on trips last summer, which was great. But this trip, based on some of your recommendations, so not only know insurance, travel.
Oh yeah. Travel, I really love.
You love travel.
I love it.
So we're doing, this is kind of cool. We're going to do, we're going to arrive in England, and we're going to London, and then the London countryside, Prague, Vienna, Budapest, and then down to Apulia again.
Wow.
In the southern region, the heel of the boot. And then down to Calabria, where my grandfather was born, in Calabria.
I would definitely recommend the Opera House in Vienna.
Oh, you said that. That's on the agenda.
You absolutely, you wear a tux, you do the whole James Bond thing, and you
That's
go
awesome.
for it 100%.
I love it. I love it.
That's a great trip. I mean, you're going to get to see, when you're in Europe, you see so many different countries, meet so many different people. Everybody there wants to know your story. You get to learn so much about them. I was in Switzerland for the holidays, and a lot of the people there, they're not as friendly. Well, BS, man. I mean, you got to just talk to them. After 5 minutes, you're getting along like you've known them, just like anybody from Italy or anywhere else. So that's the reason I love to travel. The places are beautiful. Obviously, the food, the wine, all that is spectacular. But it's just getting to meet a lot of people that really, when you walk in, they hope that you're coming from somewhere else.
We had that same experience in France. Everybody said, "Oh, wait till you see how mean they are in Paris. Yeah. They don't like Americans." Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? I met so many cool people. Right. It was freaking awesome.
Right.
We our trip last summer, I mean, we spent a bunch of time in Paris. We went to Lyon, France, which is the #1 culinary city in the world. It's got more Michelin star chefs that come out of Lyon. There's something in the mayonnaise.
Right.
Than anywhere in the world. It's an incredible place. But nobody knew English, and we got along just fine. It was awesome. Right. A couple glasses of wine. I mean, it was great. So that's a myth. So if anybody, hears, don't go to that, they don't like Americans, it's bullshit.
Right.
Maybe you're just an asshole, and that people don't like you because you're a jerk. If you're a jerk, nobody should be nice to you. Remember, we talked about this on a podcast. Don't be a jerk.
Right.
People want to deal with nice people.
So I think it's Rick Ross. He says money speaks fluent. So if you're in the right places, you're doing the right things, and you have the right approach, people are always going to take you in. And I've learned that from, experiences of being a lot of different places, from the nicest place to waiting at the airport. And overall, man, people are so, it's for me, it's energizing to go out there and see that.
I love it.
And it's just something that's such a big part of my life.
So with that, we'll wrap it up. I really appreciate you coming in, Ryan, coming up from Miami. You add tremendous value to my business. You add tremendous value to all the agents that you work with.
Thank you, man.
And anybody that's listening, just remember, if you can take anything from this podcast, make sure that you have the A team around you, because it adds tremendous value to your clients. It'll help you with deals. It'll help you get deals. And I think that is the most important part to take out of this, is build a great team around you, and good things will happen. Thank you so much for coming in, Ryan. And I appreciate everybody who downloaded this episode. This is Billy Nash, the Luxury Real Estate Podcast. We're coming at you unscripted and hard, and we'll talk to you next week. I love yous all, and get some deals done.
Thanks, Billy.